thought a better leader than Kirthiga to kick it off. So before we jump into the conversation, I also just wanted to give us stats so that we understand the gravity of the situation. Women workforce participation in India was around 20% in 2010. If I have to ask you, ladies and gentlemen over here, what do you think that percentage would be in 2022? Maybe you can share in your comment section. Just wanted to get a sense check. What do you think from 20% in 2010? Where do you think it has moved? Okay, 25%, 8%. It's actually a recent, there was a Bloomberg study which says it's less than 10% in 2022. So it's moving in the reverse direction, and that's why these conversations are so important. And this is the reason why we are hoping that with this platform, we can have fantastic women leaders who can share their experiences. So with that, let me introduce Kirthiga Reddy. I don't think you need an introduction, Kirthiga. People have been like, I have been receiving so many messages that these are the questions that we have for you, but let me just take a stab at it. Kirthiga was SoftBank's first female investment partner and Facebook India's former managing director. Currently, she is a co-founder and CEO and building a stealth Web3 startup. She also holds an MBA from Stanford University. She has been recognized as Fortune India's most powerful women and as Fast Company's most creative people in business, among other recognitions. Kirthiga, so excited to have you kick the series off and for the conversation. I'm really looking forward to it.
Ahana, super excited to be here. Kudos to you, HBS India, and the entire team. The first of anything is very special, and this is your first kickoff series. And of the many firsts, like this is, again, super special to be invited. So very humble to be here.
Great. So everyone, I think the way we really wanted to, have this conversation, we really want to keep it candid. We want to keep it free flowing. So for the first 40 minutes, we have questions, which I'm going to ask Kirthiga, and we have basically divided into 4 chapters of her life. Each chapter would have a lesson and inspirational story, but I will really encourage each one of you, if you have questions, please share it in the chat box. We also have 15 minutes in the end where we would love for you to come and ask questions to Kirthiga directly. So with that, let me just kick this off. So Kirthiga, the first chapter, wanted to know about your early childhood. You have grown up in a middle-class family. You have lived in small towns. You have lived in metros. I just wanted to understand, how has your childhood helped in shaping who you are today?
Ahana, I think people say everything that you do as an adult can be traced back to your childhood in one way or another. 3 important lessons during my childhood journey. One came very early on, was inspiration from my mom. The second one was later on as I joined engineering from my dad, and then there was just a personal learning through my engineering education. So very quickly, those 3. One, my mother did not have the opportunity to finish her high school education because her parents said, you only need enough math to do the grocery bill. And by the way, her brother finished a postgraduate degree. So I think it's safe to say that they understood the value of education and that this was, a gender-related issue. And my mother is smarter, wiser than I will ever be. If she had had that opportunity, she would be the rocking, C-level executive at a global company. And she regrets that opportunity to have had an education and a career. And Ahana, fast forward to earlier this year, I had the opportunity to be part of the first all-female, all-immigrant management team for the Athena Technology 2 SPAC to ring the New York Stock Exchange opening bell. And my mother joined us over Zoom. And for me, that moment where she's dialed in over Zoom with her daughter and with her grandchildren, that generous goosebumps. And it gives me a huge sense of optimism about the change that this group and so many others are driving. And Also a huge sense of responsibility on how much change I need to make and each one of us need to make, which is why, Ahana, when you and Kushbu reached out for this event, I said, okay, I have to do this. So that was one. Two, engineering. I actually discovered during the application process, and this is related to the moving around, that I didn't have the domicile to apply for government colleges in Maharashtra and in the place that I was in, because we moved around so much. And honestly, I did not know that until all the way through the application process. And my parents believed, of course, in the right for education, but they said, Beta, there's an engineering college in Nanded, so that is where you go to. And when I cried and about not having the opportunity to apply for higher ranked schools, my father said, he said, listen, you can go to an incredible institution and do nothing with that opportunity, or you can make the most of what you have. And sure enough, fast forward, when I graduated second in the university, which included the colleges that I could not apply to, that message really cemented itself. And it is a lesson that I carry with me about making the most of the opportunities given to you. And my last one is related to the moment of time that I'm in. I had someone reach out to me when I was in engineering. My best friend's brother said, hey, we run a hospital. Can you automate this whole patient intake system? And we'll pay you for it. For my father was in the service industry for 30 years. And the whole concept of doing something entrepreneurial was so foreign at that time that I ignored it, and I sat very focused on my education. And I still regret that opportunity because I was just not exposed to entrepreneurship. And so many, many years later, decades later, it's almost, a dream come true again to be an entrepreneur, and so inspired by what you are doing, Ahana.
Thank you so much for sharing it, Kirthiga. And I think the passion that you have, it resonates in every word that you say. And for all the people who have joined in, just to give you some context, Kirthiga is joining from LA. She woke up early in the morning. We are doing this where she's based out of US, and she was so grateful for and so gracious with her time. And I was just feeling really awkward that how can I ask her to do it, at 6 o'clock IST, because I know it will be convenient for the audience to join in. So Kirthiga, thank you so much, and thank you for doing it in an LA from a hotel when you're traveling and doing so many meetings. It just speaks how passionately you care about this topic. So thank you for doing it.
No, totally. And I have to tell you, I texted Ahana before I slept. I said, if you don't hear from me 30 minutes before, can you please call me? I have this recurrent nightmare that I'm going to oversleep a meeting. And remember, I used to have to do calls with, Ma Sasan from SoftBank, who was in Japan. So that was an even earlier hour. So you can imagine that I had the nightmare several times. So you guys picked a very decent time comparatively.
Awesome. So Kirthiga wanted to move to the next chapter. I think you mentioned about that you are the first speaker for this series, but you have a history of being the first. You were the first female investing partner at SoftBank, first employee at Facebook India, and also the managing director at Facebook India and South Asia for 6 years. I wanted to ask you, how difficult is it for women to create a seat at the table and to demand that? So would love to understand, your journey in getting that seat, and what was the experience post that?
To your question of how difficult it is for women to get a seat at the table, the stats that you framed this conversation with tells the story. It is a challenge, and for each woman on this call, we have all beaten several odds to even be here. And a huge kudos to the men joining this call, because we need every one of you to be such incredible allies. So I could not be more grateful to all of the men who are on this call and listening and participating. It is a challenging journey overall. And sometimes people ask me, Kirthiga, does it get easier once you get more senior? And I know they want me to say yes. And I have to tell them, I know that's what you want me to say, but I'm so sorry to say that it actually gets even more challenging. Again, that's not what you want to hear. Or maybe I would say just as challenging. It's just that the problems become more complex and you get more stronger. It's like going to the gym. It never gets easier. You just get more stronger, right? And I will tell you that I have probably told people that I feel not heard, I feel bullied more in the last decade of my career than in the first decades of my career. I think that's also because of a few different factors. One, I think early on, you're just not sure. Is it something that you did? Is it really something I need to speak up about? Two, society will often tell you, and your best friends and your best well-wishers will tell you, don't worry about it. Like it will all work out. Don't raise your voice. Don't speak up. And later on in your career, few things happen. One, you begin to recognize when things are really not right and when you need to stand up. Two, I do think things like the movement around us for women to speak up and things like Me Too has created a platform for all of us to speak up. And lastly, given the levels that each one of us are, the responsibility that if I don't speak up, who will? And that has prompted conversations like that. And the beauty, Ahana, of what I've seen is that 90% of the time is actually an unconscious bias. They don't even know that something is happening. I remember being introduced to an external senior executive, myself and a male investment partner were introduced. And I was introduced as Kirthiga and this male partner are the two decision makers. So it was very clear in the framing. The person responds back, and guess what he does? What does he do, Ahana?
He maybe looked at the male investor first.
Yeah, so this was an email. So he responded and he only highlights the male investment partner, and the conversation goes on. And so I actually send a note to him and I say, this is probably just an unconscious bias, but I just want to highlight that you have two decision makers on the thread. And I really look forward to working with you. So it's very nice about it. Of course, after I send the note, I was like, oh my God, what did I do? What is he thinking? He's probably calling everyone at the firm and saying, who is this person who wrote to me? Because it was a very senior executive. But after a few hours, he actually responded back and said, thank you for highlighting. And I look forward to working with you. And by the way, ever since that happened, anytime I write to him, I get a response in 30 seconds. So,
Wow.
it really behooves all of us to be able to use your voice. And that was an important lesson. Most of the times it's actually an unconscious bias. It's actually not personal. He has probably never seen and I was the first female investment partner, so he had never seen that before. And I remember Kamala Harris, when she broke the glass ceiling to become the vice president of the United States, saying, dream with ambition, and paraphrasing her, dream about roles that have never been done before, and that's how you break glass ceilings.
I think what a great example, Kirthiga. I have a follow-up question here. Because what you mentioned about the subconscious biases, it's so critical because you are not even aware. And I think it's not just the men, right? Sometimes it exists
Totally.
even among the women. And I'll give you a personal example. My entire journey, when I went to IIT Bombay, we were 28 girls in a class of 600. When I visited manufacturing plants, sometimes I was the only women on the shop floor. So I have been very comfortable around being surrounded by men. But as you go to the top, I find it even like much more harder thing to be like getting into the rooms and to feel like you're being heard. It's an inclusive environment. So my question to you is, and I'll be very candid and give you examples like Diwali parties. Very recently, you can see rooms filled with men having cigars, playing poker. Why is it become even harder at the top? Because now I can completely resonate when someone says that it is 10x harder for a woman to make the same impact as men. I never felt it when I was starting my journey, but now at the top, I can sense that you have to create a room for yourself. So, firstly, do you agree that as you go up, there is a difference, especially when these informal settings and informal bondings are happening? And then what would be your advice to women who are trying to move up the ladder?
Ahana, I so relate to your journey in that if someone had asked me during the first 5, 7, even like 9, 10 years of my career, is there a glass ceiling? I would say, no, I've never experienced it. And it was only when I saw those numbers dwindling as I got more senior and being in room more often than not, where I was the only woman, and having to fight through more barriers to break through, that I said, there is a glass ceiling, and this is what people talk about, and one has to do things differently. What is my advice? Advice one is actually to soak in the research around what are these unconscious biases. And these days, there are a lot of different resources. Even if you go to Lean In, they have 50 ways to fight unconscious bias. They have a self-serve program that you can roll out to your corporate executive team, and each one of us can take. So be aware of it. At an individual level, be aware of what research says about, women don't negotiate. Women look at a job description and want to see a 60%, want to see 100% match in terms of what's listed there to even raise their hands. And I see smiles with the faces on Zoom. Whereas men, and it's just research, by the way, that says that they see 60% match and they think that they're the next best thing to slice bread, right? So being aware of these biases, and if you fall under that statistic, being very conscious personally to say, hey, maybe I should raise my hand, and I should negotiate. Very often, myself included, as you're negotiating for compensation at the start later, you say, 3%, 5%, what's the difference it's going to make in my lifestyle? They're going to think that I'm not interested in the role, I'm not going to negotiate. Well, guess what? Those 3% adds up such that as a woman, you might have to work 10 years more than a man who negotiates, right? So let's be very careful. We all know about the compounding value of money, and how this can compound over time. So that's one. To seek community, once you know that it's not personal, it kind of course, it still sucks, but it kind of gives you a little bit of a distance. And then you can choose strategies for how is it that you overcome that, including negotiation. I had Margaret O'Neill from Stanford Business School who writes a book about Women Don't Ask. She gives you practical tips like make your stereotypes work for you. If you do negotiate, women are seen differently than men, right? You are actually seen as you're not a team player, all of those aspects. So she talks about tips like, talk to them about how you might be the primary caregiver outside of your immediate family as well. And then that almost fits into the stereotype. They say, I know why she's asking, right? So whatever strategy that is, make that work for you. And with initiatives like this, look at how is it that you can drive change in a systematic way, Ahana. So those are a few different avenues among many others to drive the change that we want to see.
I think the point around negotiation is so spot on. I've always felt very embarrassed asking something for myself. And then a friend of mine gave this very practical advice that think of Ahana as a third party, and then go into the negotiation room saying that, oh, you are representing Ahana. And then there's a completely different energy. Like, I'm like, okay, I want to get her the best deal. And then that embarrassment goes out of the window. So that has definitely helped me. There's also a follow-up.
Yeah, that's incredible, by the way. Even my husband will tell me the same thing. It's like you negotiate such great things for everyone who works with you, for you, anyone who comes and talks to me. Like if Geeta came and told me I'm thinking of my next job, the first thing I would tell her is make sure like you negotiate, right? It's I will tell everybody, but when it comes to you, I think that's such great advice.
Exactly. I think the other follow-up question which Nitya has pointed out, which I've also heard, whenever you speak up and you say we can't find women who meet, we can't find women, especially in the investing community. She mentioned that the response she typically gets is, we can't find women who meet our standards. So what's your reaction to this today, and has this attitude really changed?
One, my reaction to that is that's total BS, right? And has that attitude really changed? It's work in progress, and we all know that we are not seeing the change that we want to see. How is it that we tackle that? two things. To me, it's just a shortcut for, I don't want to put in the effort to find the right people, is what that really means to me, because consistently we've seen that most of these cases, it is not a pipeline problem, it is more a marketplace and a network problem, in that you just don't have visibility. And I see this all the time, even in investing. There's a hot company, they have a set of male investors on their cap table. Who do they introduce them to? They introduce them to other male investors, because typically that's what they have in the network. And you have to think much more harder and be much more intentional to make sure that you're also reaching out to people who might not be in your network, but might be the right complement to your cap table. I would also say that certainly there are times that you have to do things that are different in order to expand that pool. And I will give huge kudos to Deep Nishar, who was the managing partner at SoftBank Vision Fund, and HBS alum, who actually created this role of venture partner at SoftBank Vision Fund, to be able to take people from the operating side who wanted to move and explore investing. So I was the first investment partner who also came in with an operating background at that level, who then was groomed, and I had an incredible ability to make impact, deployed $1 billion for the firm, two new unicorns, 3 companies publicly listed. But that started from a male ally saying, okay, we have to think differently. If we want to drive the kind of diversity that we want, we have to think differently.
No, absolutely. And I think it's so important to loop in men into these conversations, because we need allies to make a difference. And before we move on to the next chapter, Kirthiga, I just wanted to take another question from the audience. I think it's very relevant, which is a difference, like a completely different spectrum, which is, what's your take on token leadership positions being created for women?
When you say token leadership position being created for women, you could be asking me one of two things. What do I think about quotas for women? Or you could be asking me what happens when people create a role, but they don't really have a commitment to diversity.
The latter. I think the question is more like latter, because you have 20% we need women, because you have like a tick box thing, and you just are doing it for the sake of hitting your numbers.
So I think two things. One, honestly, I feel that is better than not doing it, because that just forces you to look harder and consistently it opens up eyes for really and avenues to really qualified women. And that over time, women come in these positions, or any kinds of diversity. I would say this is broad to diversity. We spend a lot of time thinking about, LGBTQ diversity. We think a lot about underrepresented minorities. So I'm talking about diversity broadly. I do think that is better than not doing it. And eventually it does lead to the right balance. Of course, my challenge to everyone here is that again, it is not a pipeline issue. You might have to think differently. You might have to look harder. But this is about both quality and the numbers. And Hannah, I'll tell you one more thing. So there's a lot of conversation also about diversity, equality, inclusion, and belonging. Diversity is almost the first and almost the simplest thing. It's very visible. You can see whether you have the right numbers. But then the next question is, okay, you have the right numbers. Are you creating an environment where each of their voices are heard? Do they feel that sense of equal playing field in the processes? Do they feel a sense of belonging? As they say, the first D is just about being invited to the dance floor. And then the next question is, are they actually on the dance floor? Are they dancing the way that they want to? And are they having a great time while doing so? So we have to start thinking also well beyond just the numbers.
No, absolutely. And very well said, Kirthiga, that sometimes when the pendulum is on one extreme, you have to put the pressure and maybe take it to to the other extreme, and you have to bring more women. I think one example is Harvard Business School. I heard one of the professors were mentioning that there was always this question that didn't have enough Black professors, and maybe last couple of years they have, I think, 10, if I'm not mistaken, Black professors joining the college. So yeah, completely agree that we have to swing the pendulum to the other side. Okay, so I think there are a lot of these questions. Please keep these questions coming, and we'll definitely keep looping them in. Wanted to move to the next chapter, which is also I'm very intrigued because I don't see that, especially when it comes to journeys for women, is taking risk. And I love the quote where you said that, don't be afraid to take risk. In risk will become biggest opportunities. And the reason, I'm very excited about this chapter because, Kirthiga, there's a perception that women are a bit risk averse, and men generally take more riskier bets. And there was this HBR article which says that if you want to clear this stat out, the only way to do is to share stories of women who are taking big bets, big risk, and would love to share, or maybe with the audience, your journey of, you had this fantastic, successful career, leaving all that aside, and then getting into and like building more, being an operator, and that too in Web3. So please do share your journey, your thought process. I'm sure it's going to be very inspiring for each one of us here.
Ahana, I firmly believe that my best is yet to come. And if I had to think back on my career decisions, the question that comes to my mind is a poster that we have in many Meta offices across the globe, which is a question: what would you do if you weren't afraid? And I want everyone in the audience to actually take 30 seconds to think about that answer for themselves. What would you do if you weren't afraid? And I've also seen this sometimes phrased at, what would you do if success were guaranteed? So whichever frame of question works for you, think about that. And write that down. And if you so choose, I wish I could interact with each one of you individually, but send me a note on LinkedIn and tell me your answer. So do think about it.
Write in the comments as well. I think sometimes when writing in front of everyone, I think there's a sense of accountability also that comes. So feel free to write in the chat box, guys.
Totally, that would be amazing. And actually, Ahana, research has shown that having a big, bold vision and sharing it, just that act increases your chances of manifesting that by over 40%. And so why wouldn't you take those odds, right? If you can do that so simply. Ahana, my journey of risk taking, as I look at my career, started well before my decision to leave my role in investing and go back into operating. I would say few examples that come to mind. Right after Stanford Business School, one imagines that after getting an MBA degree from one of the best business schools in the world, one would get a title raise, a pay raise. But I decided to go from being a director of engineering at Silicon Graphics, a 9,000 people company, to go to a startup, which meant and to do product management. So I went from being a director of engineering to being an individual contributor, taking a 40% pay cut because of the payout of future equity. Right? And I had several sleepless nights. I had thinking, is it going to really look bad on my resume? I was a director of engineering. I did my MBA at Stanford, and now I'm an individual contributor. I spoke to an executive search recruiter, and she said, Kirthiga, if this is a short-term move, then it's likely a bad thing. If this is a long-term move, if this is an industry and a function that you really like, it will all work out in the long run. If you go to my LinkedIn, you will actually see director of engineering, director of product management. That's what you'll most visibly see, right? And then you'll see general manager, Facebook India. What you don't see is the twists and turns behind that. And that's something that I want each one of us to remember. Second example, joining Facebook India, I joined to lead operations. I was going from product to operations. Again, I had people reach out to me and say, usually people want to do the different direction. They want to go from being in an operations role to, I really want to do product. I really want to, move closer to the business. And you did the other direction. And my response is, listen, this was Facebook in India. I would do whatever role was important for them to drive their success. And the next example I'll give you was when I left Facebook. Two things that were driving my decision. One, I was really missing the startup ecosystem. I was missing the building, the scaling. And then I heard the stat at one of the Facebook conferences where they were talking about augmented reality, virtual reality. And they said, in the United States, 95% of your FaceTime is done with your children is done by the time that they go to college. And my older child was 2 years away from going to college. And when I heard that statement, they were talking about that's why you need augmented reality and virtual reality, because your children will go away and you will not see them. My heart, of course, sank at the first part of that statement. 95% of my FaceTime with my child is going to be done in 2 years. And I was waking up to that stat every single day. So I decided to first take an all-life, no-work break. So I took a break for 3 months. And whoever called me for a role, I said, I'm taking a break. If this role is important, it will wait for me. I had the biggest well-wishers tell me when I was leaving Facebook, why are you doing that? Go find a different role. You will lose all of your negotiating leverage if you don't find a different role and then take your 3 months off. And I told them, I don't believe I'm missing out a career high. And even if I did, I would much rather regret missing that than regret time with my child. We did incredible things, Ahana. I did the Everest Base Camp trek with her and really created moments and memories for a lifetime. And I think I can safely say I did not miss a career high, given all the opportunities beyond that. So what would you do if you weren't afraid? And what would you do if success were guaranteed is a question that I would leave you with. And coming to the current decision, my last investment at SoftBank Investment Advisors was not surprisingly in a Web3 NFT metaverse company. That was when I began to get intense flashbacks to my early days of building Facebook India. And then I was at an event. Take a guess. What is the percentage of female founders in the Web3 space? I'd ask the audience to take a guess. Type in your chat.
I'll also join in. Let me also guess.
Yeah. So yes, we are at single digits. And when I heard that, even more so, it was one of those moments of I can visualize what this opportunity is going to be 10 years from now. I think that's what one of the things that my career has taught me is to think in decades. If not me, who? If not now, when? And so here we are.
Wow, what a fantastic story, Kirthiga. I'm just getting goosebumps as you are sharing these stories. I want to take one question which is very relevant and would love to get your point of view. So Geeta is asking, she's also building in stealth mode. It's early stage and it's bootstrap. Do you think it's hard for women to raise funds? And you've been on both sides of the table, so I'm guessing you can provide a fantastic perspective onto this.
And I want to know your answer to this question as well. Okay. So the numbers again tell the story, right? Where despite all the conversation and the focus on diversity, I think the last time I looked, even in the United States, dollars going to female founders were in the teens. And if you then break that down into women of color, that number falls even lower. And that also kind of matches the number of women in investing roles as well. So from an overall numbers perspective, the numbers are low. And that tells you that it is a challenge. Think about then all of the aspects and the techniques that we spoke about when we just spoke about, even from a career perspective, breaking through and getting ahead, building your personal board of directors, thinking about the fundraise much ahead of time. How is it that you tell your story? How is it that you leverage your community, take advantage of accelerator programs, and HBS also does such a phenomenal job in terms of encouraging entrepreneurship. I also find that there are many resources available that are not taken advantage of. So it is harder, and one has to work harder for the same funding on average. Make sure you're taking advantage of every aspect to try to break through those numbers. I am dying to hear your answer, Ahana.
I think, Kirthiga, that's a reality. I think as a founder, I have accepted the reality. But what I keep doing is I keep challenging the status quo. I still remember when I was going for the first raise, everyone told me that no one will give you money pre-product. And I think sometimes as women, there are also these subconscious biases, and people will tend to keep stopping you. I think what you need to be is fearless, and you need to keep pushing the boundary. I said, that's fine. I think I'm going to share my story. I'm going to share my passion. And hopefully you'll enter into a room where people will judge you based on the merit, based on what you bring to the table. And you just need to find that one room. So my learning has been just keep shattering the glass ceiling and keep challenging the status quo. Sometimes we tend to not believe in ourselves because the stats are so bad. And I'm hoping that bit by bit, we will keep pushing the stats as well.
Ahana, one more example that I'll give you to illustrate the same. Right after Facebook, I started a seed fund with 6 other female Facebook executives called F7. And then 2 of them became full-time GPs, and they just closed their 50 million seed fund. Similarly, when they started, a lot of people told them, this is your first fund. You should only aspire to like a 10 or 15 million fund. Do not aspire for more. They kept pushing, and they closed their 50 million seed fund, has the most incredible investors, incredible LPs, including Sheryl Sandberg and her husband, including Paris Hilton. So just the most incredible investor, most incredible LP base, but it was because they kept pushing. And a few weeks from now, we will also be announcing my seed raise. So
woohoo, awesome. I think big congratulations, Kirthiga. We're gonna keep that. And I think this is she's announcing for the first time on this talk. So we're super excited and wishing you all the very best. We can't wait to see the magic that you're gonna create with the startup, Kirthiga. So moving on, and wanted to go to the next and the final chapter, which is giving back. We started with this stat where the women participation in the workforce is on a declining trend. And here we see a lot of, and I'm going to take the liberty to call ourselves privileged women and men here. What can we do to make a difference?
I will always start with ourselves, and for each one of us to dream big and to do what we do. Know that you are causing a ripple effect beyond what you will imagine. So dream big, surround yourself with community that believes in you almost more than you believe in yourself, and keep driving forward. Okay. Look for opportunities. Someone actually wrote in the chat about creating opportunities for yourself, and certainly actually when I remember for the Facebook India role, I was in India. I'd relocated with Motorola, and I was so energized. This was 2008. By the growth in the country, internet was just taking off. I made my list of companies that I would love to work for. I reached out through a business school classmate to get an introduction to Sheryl Sandberg, talked to her about my passion for what Facebook was doing, and talked to her about opportunities to help build their operations in India. We explored a few different roles then, said we'll keep in touch, and it was almost a year later that Facebook actually announced its intention to open an office in India. And there was a brutal interview process then, and I was very humbled to have the opportunity to join Facebook in India and build our business there. So look and reach out for opportunities, make things happen. I'm so amazed by all the people who are also becoming entrepreneurs and really changing the equation. I would double click also on broad-based scale. If you think about the example that I shared around being the first all-female, all-immigrant management team during the New York Stock Exchange. Well, the vision came from someone called Isabel Freedom, who 2 years ago, as SPACs were getting their resurgence, she looked around and saw similar single-digit percentage stats of women in executive teams and said, this is a new financial instrument. So she created this platform of all-women SPACs. And through that, in just a matter of a year, we've had the first Black woman ring the New York Stock Exchange bell. We've had the first Korean American woman, and we were the first all-female, all-immigrant team. So do not underestimate the change that can happen in a year. And I am so excited again by initiatives like what HBS is doing with this series. So think about it individually, think about it systematically, think about it in your day-to-day. You talked about unconscious bias. There are times where I've been in a meeting and after the meeting, someone will tell me, did you see how that woman was speaking and she was spoken over? And it would dawn on me, yes, you're right. And I didn't even notice it. And it was happening right in front of me. And I'm someone who's the biggest champion. And it was happening right in front of me. So do not discount the number of times that in our day-to-day, we can make changes by using our voice for all the things that we care about. Each of our voices has more power than we think possible. So let's all use our voice.
And Kirthiga, one request which I have from my side, I have seen that picture, all-women team with the fearless girl. If that's okay, would love to share it across on our groups, because I haven't seen anything more powerful than that. And I still remember, I think it's few months back, but it has just registered in my head. It's so amazing.
No, please feel free to share that. We actually had Minister Nirmala Sitharaman visit the Bay Area. I hosted a Women CXO event with her, and I gave her a signed picture of the fearless girl signed by the original sculptor herself. It was another very special moment. I think it's pretty cool that both, formerly the defense side and now the purse strings of the largest democracy in the world is run by women. It's pretty neat.
Absolutely. I think we have a lot of questions, and I want to open it up so that people can ask questions. So I can see one question, and I would let Peter. So I think it's Nupur who has posted that question, that how do you remain fearless? Nupur, do you want to ask this question?
Sure. Thanks, Ahana. I was just trying to understand, Kirthiga. First of all, thank you so much for taking the time, and Ahana for.
All right, we're going to put a spotlight on her so that I can see her if we can.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm in the car, and therefore.
Okay, sorry. Totally fine. Yes.
But you can see.
I just wanted to make sure that if you're there, that I was actually seeing your beautiful smile, and there you are.
Yeah. Thank you. That's very kind of you. My question was, how do you remain feisty and fearless? I think as you grow in this journey, I find myself, and I find that with other senior executive women, that you start losing that sense of a hustle. You're so exhausted by the time.
Yeah. I think I get the question. I think they're losing you a little bit. And your question, Nupur, was how do you keep the hustle?
The top, that same, you're trying to fight.
Yep. So you're going in and out, Nupur, but I think the question was, you're so exhausted. How do you keep the fight going? How do you keep the hustle going? To me, it first starts with dreaming big and having that bigger purpose of what you are driving towards. A quick story, and I'm sure you've heard of this in various forms, and this comes from Prakash Iyer's book. That was where I first read it, Habit of Winning, where he talks about a woman walking the streets of Rome, stopping 3 people who were doing things with bricks. And she asks, what are you doing? The first person looks at her super angry, says, can't you see? I'm putting 1 brick on top of another. Like, that's what I'm doing. The second person smiles and says, I'm building a wall. The third person beams and says, I'm building the tallest cathedral in Rome. Okay. They're all doing the same thing, but their perspective is very different. And to me, having that perspective of what you're doing and what this adds up to is a big part of what gives you that hustle and makes you go through the ups and the downs that are inevitable. So that gives me motivation. Two, I do find my moments of what gives me more energy. I will leave this call with more energy than I came in with, given all of your question, all of your enthusiasm, the passion that I sense in driving the cause. Find your way of finding that balance. I have always would have signed up for a next half marathon because again, my running gives me my balance and my joy. So figure out your ways to incorporate things and keep that going, and know that we need each one of us to be very, very, very successful to drive the change that we want to see.
Very well said, Kirthiga. And I think there is one related question, and I personally also resonate with that. I think what Bindi, and I think I let Bindi come and ask this question, but to give you a bit of context is sometimes, and especially I've also heard, oh, that you are the feminist type. She's the one, always keep talking about like women, women, women. So I very resonate with that question. So Bindi, why don't you share your question with Kirthiga?
So I think most people in the age-based group will certify I'm one of those that keeps raising it, not just women issues, but others in general. And I'm literally labeled as the one who makes a lot of noise or the troublemaker. And how do you keep going, right? Like at times I think, is it worth it? Is it really even like worth making that noise? Because even at work, there were times when once you reach a senior position, obviously, nobody questions, right? Now I'm the boss, so nobody cares to question me now because I say whatever I want. But in other networks, I feel there's invariably, and I know the HBS network, I've been turned around and told, I don't know how many times, you ask too many questions, you raise too many doubts. And why, right? Like this is a fraternity that should be thinking more. Why label somebody as the troublemaker? So that's, my question is, should we stop? I don't want to stop asking because that makes us something else. But how do you navigate these people that constantly keep telling you that, you raise your voice too much? So, and I know there's a lot of them saying, Bindi, keep going, because I'm one of those that keeps going all the time in the group making noise. So.
Bindi, this was a stat that I learned from the Lean In 50 Days to Fight Unconscious Bias. There was a question that says, guess how many times it comes up in like behavioral aspect come up in performance reviews for women versus behavioral aspect, she was too aggressive, versus how many times things like that come up for men. What do you think?
Absolutely, won't deny it. I've been called aggressive, but then also called the mother hen on the other side. So you get equally categorized. No matter what you do, there's a personality trait that pops in when you are evaluated. So.
Yeah, so the number is like over 60% for women, and it's single-digit percentage for men in terms of behavioral aspects that are called out in performance reviews. What I would say are a few things. One, you have to stay true to yourself, to me, it's often about what makes me sleep well at night, and I want to prioritize going to sleep well at night. And if I'm going to be going to sleep thinking, oh my God, I didn't raise my voice for this, I'm hurting myself. I don't want to do that. Right? Let someone else sweat about it. I'm not going to sweat about it. I have to make my voice heard. But I would further refine that to say, there are also times to perhaps prioritize and say, okay, there are 10 different things going on at this time. I have the capacity to and these are the three most important things or the two most important things. Let me focus on that. Let me make a difference. That could be a possibility, right? And the third aspect is look for allies. There are many times that I have gone to a male ally and said, listen, I don't want to be the one raising my voice every single time. I know you are with me in this cause. Is that something that you can help raise your voice on? And there are big programs around allyship about how each one of us can stand up for each other and help. So that's another tactic and a technique to also have the same impact that you will want to. And use your voice in different ways, right? There are things that are spoken in a meeting. They could be things that you put someone in one-on-one and say, this was not okay. You need to do something different. So vary your techniques as well, but stay true to yourself.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I think it would be cool for a man to call out other men when they are not being inclusive. I think would be amazing to see that on the WhatsApp groups, and I hope, and I'm guessing Bindi would agree as well. Okay, so I think we are running out of time, but I just want to take one last question. I think Shweta also has a related question. So Shweta, you want to share your question?
Sorry, I was on mute. I said, thank you, Kirthiga, for sharing your wonderful journey with us. It's really been inspiring. So my question is, how do you find your passion? I started my career like you as an engineer, worked in project management, program management, worked in the NGO sector. Now I want to do something in education. So it's changed. There's a lot of pushback, and like you said, when you transition from one role to another role, everybody said, why are you doing this? You're taking a lower position, etc. So how do you find your passion, and how do you sort of stick to it, and how do you take an entrepreneurial journey on that?
There are stats that say that today's generation will have 5 to 7 careers in their lifetime. These are not jobs, these are careers. Right. I think many of us here are living that millennial career. I am no millennial, but certainly my journey has been that of being a builder, investor, going right back into building and several different variations thereof. How do you find your passion and stick to it? Shweta, I think just your description of your journey spoke so clearly to me of that journey for yourself, where you have found your passion and you are making these moves. The way I have been able to find that path is to just be true to myself and look for when are thoughts coming back to me. People often ask me, how do you know it's time to leave? And for me, it's when I'm waking up to thinking about something more often than not, then it's time for me to pay attention to that voice inside me and do something about it. And by the way, the do something about it, especially I would, just from a stats perspective, a woman might come a much longer than it would for a man. And there are all kinds, again, research that says, men are rewarded based on potential and women are rewarded based on performance. And I've seen that firsthand, even, for example, when I would put 2 people up for promotion, where I would think that these are 2 people, men and a female exec, a male exec, who have had the same kind of impact. I would have had to fight much harder to make the case for the woman being promoted versus the man. And the minute you know of what are the underlying drivers, you can try to make a shift. So that's how I have found my cue is, am I waking up to that direction more often than not? And then having to prepare for it. It might not just happen the minute you think about it. You have to prepare for that and put the right building blocks in place to be able to make that move.
Thank you.
Awesome. And I love Aarti shared a pivot by Jenny Blake. So yes, I know there are so many other ideas for the questions. So thank you. Thank you to everyone who's chiming in. Awesome.
Hey, I know that questions. Yeah, no, go ahead, Kirthiga. I think there are a lot of questions. We're sorry we won't be able to cover, but we have many more sessions. But over to you, Kirthiga. Any last thoughts? Any last questions?
Yeah. So I guess I just wanted to quickly give my thoughts for all the women on this call for where you are on your different phases of life. But a big thing that I guess I have to ask about is juggling work and family. And I'll say one, if you are in the category of single and looking for a partner, and by the way, that's completely optional, look for a partner, don't look for, but if you're looking for a partner, remember that the partner that you choose is the most important career choice you make, not the role, not the function, not your manager, but the partner that you choose. I wouldn't be here having this call if not for my husband right now, taking care of my senior back home and being more than the 50-50 parent. So that's 1. 2, as you think about whether you want to have children, again, a choice. If you don't want to have children, don't have children. But if you want to have children, I went through a big phase where I was not ready. Then I felt ready, but I postponed for the smallest thing. I have to be in a conference. I can't be pregnant. Things like that. And then when I was ready, I learned that things just don't happen when you decide you're ready. And so it actually, both my girls were IVF, which is an infertility treatment. Both my girls were IVF girls, and I feel very grateful to technology for the gift of motherhood. My lesson there will never be a perfect time, which also means it's always a perfect time. So if you want to have children, go have children, and life will work around to support you. And the last superpower I want to leave everyone with is the superpower of the and versus the tyranny of the or. Many times things are presented as you can do this or that. When my second child was born, I wanted to nurse her for a year. I was a director. I was leading product management, probably not a director of product management by then. I had to travel, and I thought about, oh my God, this is when I have to make choices. And I decided I'm actually just going to travel with her. Message here is not that you make the same choices I do, but when things are presented as a or, they just try to think if there is a way to make it an and. So with that, Ahana, back to you. We'll close. And as people are logging off, if you just want to jot down the one thing that you will remember, one thing that you will take away, we would love to have that sharing as we close. Over to you, Ahana.
Thank you so much, Kirthiga, and I'll encourage everyone to please do share it in the chat box. Also, we have a Zoom selfie plan, so please do not leave before that. I think firstly I would say thank you so much, Kirthiga. You can see in the comment section that people were like super inspired. I would say for me, one big key takeaway is the compounding, the power of compounding. Think long term, think passion, think purpose. Sometimes we take so much pressure that we have to do it in 3 months, and how can we do 10 things? But if you think from a long term perspective and keep doing the right thing every single day, the journey is going to be fantastic. So with that, I think Khushbu, over to you. If we can just take a quick Zoom selfie, and would request everyone if you guys can switch on your videos.
Please switch on the cameras.
Yes, please.
And as you do that, a
seeing
quick
many
thank
familiar
you.
faces and so many new friends as well.
And I'm guessing, Khushbu, you'll give us a clue 1, 2, or 3. Otherwise, always
Yeah, 3, 2, 1, go. That's lovely. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Thank you,
And
everyone,
Khushbu, you
for
send it to
joining.
me.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ahana. Thank you, Kirthiga.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, folks. Thank you, Kirthiga. Fantastic session,
Thanks.
Ahana, as usual.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye, Hannah. Bye, Kirthiga. Thank you so much.